good to see you. So good to see you. My life just changed completely. First week in November when I fell and broke my, they call this a humerus bone, but I hadn't seen anything funny about it at all. And they said it in Fort Worth, and that was, I don't give Fort Worth much. And it didn't stay straight, so they had to break it and put a rod right here. And when they put the rod in, of course, they had to cut a lot of stuff, and the nerves right in here are gone, are dead. And so the nerves that go to my hand, so I don't have the use of my right hand.
Oh, no.
Yet they say it will come back, and I do rehab a couple of times a week and then 5 or 6 times a day, so I don't atrophy. So if it does come back, I'm ready. And I appreciate your prayers so much, and I felt them, and I don't think I'd come back at all without the spiritual help that you guys give.
Brother Bill, I think we have somebody new down here at the end of the table.
Me?
Yes.
Oh, I'm a new guy.
You're a new guy. Tell us your name.
Yes, sir. My name is John Lara.
Morning, John.
Good morning.
Hi, John.
Morning, John. Good to
I've
have
been
you.
going to Trinity
Yeah.
now for about 4 months, I guess.
Good.
Second
Oh,
service. My
awesome.
wife-
We are so glad to see you. You and Sean are young guys. When you said new guy, yeah, you're as new as we get in here.
And as young as we get too.
Because I knew he wasn't talking about Truman.
He's actually got hair and it's not silver.
And so as we think about the book of John, I would remind you that John is not writing a story. He is writing for a purpose. And now Luke, Mark, they followed Jesus as he went along, and they told that story as it went along. But John's purpose is not that. His purpose, and he wrote about it in chapter 20, verse 30, and we started out with this, and I think it's good for us to remind ourselves that he said many other signs being a miracle or something that was unusual. One of the signs being overturning the tables at the money changers. But said many other signs, therefore, Jesus performed in the presence of his disciples, which are not written in this book, but these have been written that you may what? Believe. And Dale tells me that word believe or a form of it is found 106 times in the Gospel of John, found 9 times in the chapter we're going to read today. But these are written that you might believe that Jesus is the Christ, the Son of God, and that believing you may have life in his name. And so each of the things that he writes, he has in mind. And remember, he probably wrote, 30, 40 years after this happened. So he's going back and picking up events and bringing this in order that whoever reads might understand. And we read about, as he talked, and sometimes the guys like the chief priest and the Pharisees and others opposed him, but they chose not to believe. But he kept telling them, I have been sent from God. I came here from heaven with the word of God. And that's what this is all about. And he even, I think he means to even use their stubbornness and blindness in order that we would not be that way. That we would be open-minded and listen. And if you're, I really believe in my heart that anyone is open-minded to the gospel, they'll receive it. You have to close your mind and say no. I remember those days. Do you? I remember saying no to the gospel. But I also remember very fondly saying yes to the gospel and how wonderful that was. And so today we'll read and talk about the last of these signs. It wasn't the last one that he did, it's the last one that John is going to do. But and it is a wonderful and a chief one. In order to set the stage on this, we would need to go back to John chapter 10 and in verse 40, just a couple of verses above this. He went away, he left Jerusalem, he went away, Jesus went beyond the Jordan to the place where John was first baptizing, and he was staying there. And this is a place called Bethabara. Bethabara is down close, very close to Jericho, and it would be about 20 miles from Bethany. And this becomes a part of the story. And so we understand where Jesus was when he got this message. Now, a certain man was sick, Lazarus of Bethany. Bethany, we would say, would be a part of Jerusalem. Really, it's just within 2 miles of it, would be a suburb of Jerusalem. And so it was the village of Mary and her sister Martha. And I think it's unusual, but not anything that's worth noting, that when John talks about Mary and Martha and Lazarus, he always puts Mary first because he sees that Mary cares for things that are more spiritual. Now you think about Mary and Martha was always busy doing stuff, housework, preparations and stuff. The first time we met them, she was even griping because Mary wasn't helping her. Remember? And so Luke and the others talked about Martha being the head of the house and then mentions Mary. John mentions Mary, I suppose, because he sees her doing the main thing. And so the village of Mary and her sister Martha, and it was this Mary who anointed the Lord with ointment, wiped his feet with her hair, whose brother Lazarus was sick. Now this will be in chapter 12, but he's letting us know who that was. The sisters sent to him, saying, Lord, behold, he whom you love is sick. Now, in a moment, I want to talk about that word love. Now, this means Lazarus had some kind of illness. We have no idea what. But there came a day they thought he is very bad off and we need to let the master know. And so they sent a guy. I couldn't do it now, but I understand if you really meant business, you could cover that 20 miles in a day. 20 miles. Not only that, how far below zero is Jericho? How many feet below sea level? 600 feet.
Down close to the Dead Sea.
Yeah, 600 feet. How high is Jerusalem? 4,000 feet. This means you're climbing. As you're going up.
20 miles uphill?
Yeah. Just like we used to go to school, 20 miles uphill, both ways in the snow.
Yeah, I bet you did.
And
it was snowing.
It was snowing, yeah. And so this guy went 20 miles to find Jesus, found Jesus, and told him the story. Lord, the sisters say, Lord, behold, he whom you love is sick. And when Jesus heard it, he said, this sickness is not unto death, but for the glory of God, that the Son of God may be glorified in it. Now, if you recall a few lessons ago, there was a blind man that Jesus gave him his sight. And it listed as if he had been blind in order that God might do his glory, as if God kept him blind in order to give him his sight. And I totally disagree with that. I think he was to glorify God. He was, if he had not been blind, his life would not have changed. It's the blindness that brought Jesus to him. And his blindness wasn't, I'm going to keep you blind until, no, you're blind because I want you to be saved, is the thinking of God. And it's not the same thing here with Lazarus that he was born. But by the time Jesus got the note, Lazarus was dead. He died before that guy got up there. How do we know that?
4 days.
4 days. When Jesus got there 4 days later, he was already stinking.
Putrefied.
Putrefied. Yeah, putrefied is the word. And so Jesus knew exactly what was going on. He was already dead. And he said this sickness is not unto death, but it's for the glory of God. Now, he knew what he was going to do it. And he had something in mind for the family. He had something in mind for the disciples. He had something in mind for the crowd that would be there, that they would understand even more deeply who he was and the power that he had. Lazarus was not the first person he raised from the dead. Remember the widow of Nain raised her son, and then the Jairus, his son, his daughter had died. And Jesus went there, said, "Arise, little one," and they called out her name. So it wasn't the first one, but this is one. I think if I had been the others, I think I could explain that. They weren't really dead. They're just nearly dead, you know. But this one, what question is there going to be about this day? Absolutely none. He's been buried. And Jesus heard it, this sickness is not a death, but in order that God be glorified, not only that God be glorified, but the Son of God might be glorified, he needed more people, all people, to see who he was. The glory of God, but isn't he the glory of God also? Because he is God. And when Jesus heard it, he said that. Now, verse 5 says, now Jesus loved Martha and her sister and Lazarus. Now, a little play on words is this word love. For in verse 3, the person you love is sick, and he used the Greek word is phileo. You know, like we have Philadelphia, brotherly love, and it is an affection love. I would say it was a love that evokes some emotion in it. You have a feeling toward it. And then, but Jesus says, but in verse 5, Jesus loved Martha, that's agopeo, which is the deep love. And I would call that not an emotional love necessarily, though sometimes, but a devotional. This means he was devoted to them, devoted to take care of whatever needs he could, that he loved them and would be helpful to them in their way. And so we use those two different types of a word. And so he stayed there 2 days longer in the place. This guy came, that was a day. Jesus stayed there the next day, the second day, stayed there the third day, and the fourth day, he went down to Bethany. Down to Bethabara on the fourth day. And so when he heard he was sick, he stayed there 2 days longer. Then after this, he said to his disciples, let us go to Judea again. Now, what's happening in Judea as far as Jesus is concerned?
Tried to stone him.
They were ready to kill him, ready to find any reason to kill him. And they get even more by the time we're through with this chapter. And the disciples knew that. Everybody understood that. And he says that you're not going there again, are you? And Jesus answered, and this is a beautiful passage. Are there not 12 hours in the day? 12 hours of what in a day?
Daylight.
Daylight. And if anyone walks in the daylight, he does not stumble because he sees the light of the world. He walks in the night, he stumbles because the light is not in him. Jesus is saying, I am walking in the light of God's love and going to do what God would have me to do. And men, if you are in a thing and God has a job for you to do, nothing can keep you from doing that job.
Amen.
No enemy can come against you. No illness, no death, nothing. If God has a job and you've agreed and you're on that job, you will finish that job. That's you walk in the daylight. And I'm thinking spiritually in the light of God's love, in the light of God's presence. But at night, it's a different story. If anyone walks at night, that is spiritually outside of the light of God's love, he's going to stumble. Why? The light's not on. It said the light's not on. No, it says the light's not in him. Then he said after that, our friend Lazarus has fallen asleep, but I go that I may awaken him out of sleep. And they said, Lord, if he's fallen asleep, he'll get better. Sleep's always a good sign. Now, Jesus spoken of his death, but they thought he was talking of a slumber, of a literal sleep. But Jesus said to them plainly, my Bible says Lazarus is dead. Actually, what he said was Lazarus died. Not is dead, but Lazarus died. See, he knew this. And I'm glad for your sakes I was not there. Now, if he had been there, what would he have done?
He could have healed him,
No doubt. I don't have any doubt. What if he'd been there, he would have.
and that wouldn't have been as great.
Wouldn't have glorified God. Because over and over and over, we almost get used to him healing people.
Is it worth mentioning that,
Yes.
Jesus knew about the superstition in that area? Where the Jews believed that the body would hang around,
Yeah.
the soul would hang around the body for 3 days,
Yeah.
hoping to be returned to the
Yeah.
body. So what he's doing here is he's setting up the Pharisees as well.
Absolutely.
They're gonna say later.
Good, Mike. That is true. I had not thought of that, but that is true. That the part of there was in 3 days, he might come back and live again. But he stayed away those days. I'm glad for you that for your sakes I was not there, so that you may believe. You may believe. Did they already believe in him?
Yeah, they had seen miracles.
Absolutely.
Who he was, but.
Doesn't believe have a depth to it?
Yeah.
That's what I think is. There was a time I trusted Christ as my Savior. I believed in him. But boy, the belief I have now is so much deeper than that belief. Belief is belief, but when it really comes, it comes to be an anchor. And they're going to see something that's just going to really anchor them in their belief. But let's go to him. Thomas, which is called Didymus, twin, said to his fellow disciples, okay, we're going to Judea. Let's go with him that we die. also. And I don't know whether he meant that facetious or whether he said, you know, there's a possibility.
There's a interesting side note that I had not heard that. This says, Thomas, who is also called the twin. Church tradition says that Thomas was called the twin because he looked a lot like Jesus.
Never heard that.
That's right. Yeah, that's what Alfred says in his comment.
Really? I'd never heard that.
But it's tradition, it's not.
Mhm. But these guys are ready to go to their death with him, is what I get out of that. So when Jesus came, he found that he, Lazarus, had already been in the tomb 4 days. Well, Jews do not embalm. Understand that. When somebody dies, they get them in the grave as soon as they can. Now, what were their graves like? As a cave, a hole dug in a mountain of any size that they might can. They put them in there and they put a stone against it. Now, the stone is to keep, I would suppose, animals from going in and desecrating the body. When we think of Jesus' tomb was sealed, that doesn't mean it was tied all. It means Pilate had put a seal on it, that if it were broken, somebody would have broken into it. So they didn't see it. It was just a stone in front of it. So he found he'd been dead, been in the tomb 4 days. Now, Bethany was near Jerusalem, about 2 miles off, actually about 9,000 feet. And many of the Jews had come to Martha and Mary to console them concerning their brother. Martha, therefore, when she heard that Jesus was coming to meet him, isn't that amazing? Wherever Jesus goes, there's always a crowd in front of him announcing. And no doubt somebody said, hey, I saw him out there, and he ran in and told Martha. And she was sitting, and so she came out to meet him and said to him, Lord, if you had been here, my brother would not have died. How would you interpret that? Here's the way I interpret that. Lord, you should have been here. I think Martha was a take charge. This is stone, this is written in stone. If you'd been here and you should have been, this wouldn't have happened. You know, there's a sense in which I know you, and I don't understand all this, but you could have prevented this. That's what I hear her say.
Yeah.
And
Martha was a doer.
Martha was a
She
doer.
expected other people to do it.
Absolutely. But she said, even now, I know that whatever you ask of God, God will give you. What did she mean by that?
I think Martha had faith that Jesus could heal him. And this right here is saying that whatever you ask God, God will give you.
Had a faith, but not an expectation.
Right.
Would you agree that,
Yeah.
hey, if he wanted to do it, he could do it? I don't think that she saw what could happen, but it could happen. But you're going to do the right thing. Whatever you ask of God, God will give you. And so evidently, these three people saw who Jesus was, where he'd come from, and his connection with God. And Jesus said to her, your brother shall rise again. Martha said to him, I know he will rise again in the resurrection on the last day. Now, what would she have that would tell her that? What all did she have? Only the Old Testament. And maybe things that Jesus had said. And I found one place in Daniel 12 and 2, where it says, many of those who sleep in the dust of the ground will awake, these to everlasting life, and others to disgrace and everlasting contempt. And so will be a time when they do come out of the grave, and this is a resurrection. Now, let me ask you a question. Is he going to resurrect Lazarus? No,
You can breathe the life.
he's going to resuscitate him. He's not going to,
He's gonna die again.
the body has to be risen and changed not to die again. That's what resurrection is. Just to call a dead person back to life is to resuscitate, not resurrection.
Bill, what was that verse in Daniel?
12:2. I know he will rise again in the resurrection on the last day. What is the last day? And that's kind of left to us. I personally am a rapture guy. And I think for us, the last day begins with the rapture. Now, it doesn't matter. You don't have to believe it. I do. You don't have to. But if it's when the second coming actually is, you come. But there will be a day that all who trust in Christ will be resurrected. Now, we live a resurrected life, but we have not been bodily resurrected. And Jesus said to her, I am the resurrection. I am meaning what? That word I am, I think he uses that 8 times in this scripture, in this book. And that's a quote from where? Exodus chapter 3. Who shall I tell him has sent me? And God says, I am. And Jesus said, I am. He said that before. He said,
Before Abraham was.
before Abraham was, I am. And that set off a little bit of a stone picking. The main part here, though, is not I am the resurrection, but I am the resurrection and the what? You have life because of me. Resurrection you will have because of me. You have life right now because of me.
He had the credentials because he had the power over forgiving sin, life, death, and the grave.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And whosoever believes in me shall live even if he what? Even if he dies. That is, if he goes to the grave, he is not dead. And everyone who lives and believes in me shall never die. Now let's just say, and I'll pick you out, not me. Let's just say you lay down and die. What happens immediately?
You immediately go to the life.
Absent from
Presence of the Lord.
immediately. I mean, if you are unconscious, suddenly you have consciousness like you never had it before. It's an immediate thing. There's no such thing, and I'm preaching to the choir, as soul sleep. That you go there and you sleep until he comes. No, you go to heaven. He said to the thief on the cross, today you will be with me in what? Paradise. Paradise is a walled garden. You're going to be with me in that wonderful place immediately, today, not later. And so this really, for us, ought to take the fear out of passing from here to there, because there's nothing wrong. Just suddenly you're with him, absent from the body, present with the Lord. Everyone who lives and believes in me shall never die. Do you believe this? And she said, yes, Lord. I have believed that you are the Christ, that is our Messiah. You are the Son of God, even he who comes into the world. And that's another title for the Messiah. I believe that you're everything you say you are. And when she had said this, she went away and called Mary, her sister, and said secretly, the teacher is here and is calling for you. So this lets us know we don't have the total conversation, because she would not have said he's calling for you if he had not. And so Mary Jesus hadn't arrived at the village, but still in the place where Martha met him, and evidently close to where the tomb was going to be. Then the Jews who were with her in the house, consoling her when they saw Mary, rose up quickly and went out, followed her, supposing she was going to the tomb to weep there. But she came to Jesus. Therefore, when Mary came where Jesus was, she saw him and fell at his feet, saying to him, Lord, if you had been here, my brother would not have died. Now, what do you think she meant by that?
Exhibiting the faith that she knows he would have.
I wish you had been here. I know there was a reason why. I'm not questioning you, but if you'd been here, this wouldn't have happened. I don't see it in the same attitude of Martha. Martha is almost angry. Mary is saying, Lord, I understand, but boy, I wish you'd been here. She may not have said, boy, I wish you'd been, but when Jesus therefore saw her weeping, and the Jews who came with her also weeping, he was moved in the spirit and was troubled. There's a sense in which there is an anger here. Jesus took things upon him you and I do not. I think he said all of this crying, all of this hurt is because of the sin of the world. And the sin of the world pressed in upon him. And when he saw hurt, he hurt. You remember when he said before Abraham was, I am? And remember what the Jews said, you're not yet 50 years old. How old was he?
33.
And yet they had him looking toward that. Why? When Jesus, remember the woman that touched his garment? What happened to Jesus? I think everything he did took something out of the physical. And when he was with anybody who hurt, he hurt. I was thinking as I read this, all of a sudden it came to mind, though I walk through the shadow of the valley of the shadow of death, thou art with me. He's got a rod and a shaft who will comfort me. But he's walking with me doing what? Hurting where I hurt. And hurting because I hurt. And hurting because of the sin in the world that has caused hurt to happen. It was a constant drain on him, troubled within himself. Now, in verse 34, Jesus said, where have they laid him? You know, Jesus never did things that could be helped. And he asked where they laid him. No doubt there were several other caves there.
And so he already knew.
He probably did, but the Jews were saying, and so they, where have you laid him? And they said to him, Lord, come and see. And Jesus what? Wept. When Jesus weeps, it's not the same word as when Mary weeps. When Mary weeps and the Jews weep, they're doing what? Wailing, moaning, groaning with a loud noise. Jesus' tears begin to run quietly down here. Did he hurt as bad as that? Yes. Under control. Yeah. And the Jews, they saw that, they said, behold how he loved him. And that again is the phileo love. Some of them said, couldn't this man who opened the eyes of the blind, he could have kept him from dying. Everybody knew he could do, but nobody understood what he was going to do. Then verse 38, Jesus again being deeply moved within, hurting, tears came to the tomb. It was a cave, the stone lying against it to keep anything from bothering it. And Jesus said, remove the stone. Now Martha, the sister of the deceased, said, Lord, by this time there will be a stench, for he's been dead 4 days. Now,
Back up just a minute, where it says, he groaned in the spirit. The commentaries say it was more like the Greek version says it's more like a snorting of a horse, the frustration of what the world, what evil had done to his friend. So
that's what troubled him. Jesus said, remove the stone. Martha said he can't. Now, let's just say, not me, but you died right here, and we laid you on this table dead. What immediately happens?
You start the chaos.
What immediately happened? What's happened to the blood? Settles down. Moving blood is what keeps us alive. And when it no longer does that, whatever is in you, your stomach or your intestines, will begin to swell. And if it bursts, and you begin to stink. Almost immediately. Death takes over and immediately begins it. And so 4 days, no, don't take that stone away. Lord, by this time there will be a stench. He's been dead 4 days. Jesus said, did I not say to you, if you believe, you will see the what?
Glory God.
Do you believe that, man? Men, do you believe that? If you believe, you will see the glory of God. Let me ask you, have you not from time to time seen the glory of God? I mean, it just inexplainable, except here is God. We live in that mode, praise God. And so they removed the stone. Jesus raised his eyes and he said, and I think he said it loud enough, Father, I thank you that you hear me. And I know that you hear me because always, but because of the people standing around, I said it, that they might believe that you sent me. I am praying to you so that they will understand you're doing this through me. I am being used of the Father, but this is God at work in and through me. I can do this, but only through God. So that they may believe that you did send me. And when he had said these things, he cried out with a loud voice. And I think he cried out so that the crowd would understand what he was saying. Lazarus, come forth. I never see our victor in hearing that. I'm not moved with that. And he who died, both hand and foot, with wrappings. Now, sometimes they wrap the legs separately. I do not know. If so, he would be able to make his way off of the bier and make his way. Otherwise, he would just make his way out and would shuffle to the front of the cave. We don't know. It doesn't tell us, and it doesn't matter. But all of a sudden, out of the darkness of that cave, there came a man wrapped in burial clothes. And Jesus said, unbind him and let him go. Now, when they unbound him, what was the condition of Lazarus?
It's good.
No more.
Absolutely healed.
And he was hungry.
Yeah. It's as if it had never happened. I mean, complete reset. The blood suddenly was flowing again. The entrails were alive again. It was as if it had never happened. Loose him and let him go. He's got a life to live now. You know, I also wondered sometime if Jesus wept because before he called Lazarus back, where was Lazarus? Is that good or bad? I might have to bring that guy back. Many of the Jews who had come to Mary and beheld what he had done, they believed in him. He had some new, we would say some new followers. But some of them, I'm not sure, but I'm going to go tell this to the leaders. And so they went away to the Pharisees and told them the things Jesus had done. How do you think that went over?
Well,
Pregnant high jumper comes to mind.
Jealousy.
Yeah,
well,
jealousy.
I think there was also a lot of fear. When the Pharisees heard this, it says that they were afraid.
Oh, I would have been.
Well,
Yeah,
they didn't want to lose their spot in the.
absolutely. And this becomes so obvious in a moment when we get there. The chief priests were not Pharisees. They were Sadducees.
it's at the end of the Pharisees.
And they didn't get along with Pharisees, except when something was wrong, they could both agree that they didn't want to happen. And this was one of those things. Therefore, the chief priests and the Pharisees convened a council and were saying, what are we doing? For this man is performing many signs, attesting miracles. If we let it go on like this, all the men will believe on him. The Romans will come and take away both our place and our nation. You think they saw a movement among Jesus people? It's always going to grow. Do you think they were worried about the nation?
So, we're being.
Yeah. I think the word politician comes to mind.
Like the Democrats today.
There's sure a lot of likeness there.
Yeah. So Caiaphas, and I know who he is. I've been him a couple of times. He was the high priest that year. Said, "You know nothing at all. They'll surely do that. Nor you take into account. It's expedient. It's necessary. It's good for you that one man should die for the people, and that the whole nation should not perish." Now, if these followers get their way, we're going to lose what we have. We're going to lose our job. If we lose our nation, we've lost our job. We're not the main guys anymore. Now, verse 51 says, he didn't say this of his own initiative. It probably didn't come out like he meant it to come out. He's making a prophecy. he prophesied Jesus was going to die for the nation, but not only for the nation, but he might also gather together into one the children of God who were scattered abroad. And so what he literally was saying, one man dies for all the people. And what the politician was, it's better he dies than we lose our jobs.
And he died for all the people.
He died for all the people, and all the people he died for are alive and will forevermore
And
be alive.
another part of that is, their greatest fear is that they would lose their control and their nation. Yet, what happened in this short few years?
They did. They
Yeah,
lost it.
yeah. It was, you know, they don't see what we see. We see God in control. They didn't see God in control because they like to think we're God's people. But I've said before in our study, they had made the commandments God. They were looking to the Father. They're looking, you're a sinner because you did this. Not because you don't believe, but because you did this.
And they made the temple their God.
And made the temple their God. Absolutely. The temple and the and the law was their God. Now, and so from that day, they planned together to kill him. And that's pretty plain. And that's where we'll stop today. Because 54 begins, verse 12, chapter 12 really begins with verse 54. Now, let me ask you, take a moment now. What do you wish Bill had said as we went along?
I wish we could spend some time on Thomas and how his faith might have been a little misdirected, but at least he was willing to say, hey, let's go with Jesus now, even if we all have to die for it.
Absolutely.
But that's such a drastic contrast between the Thomas you hear after Jesus comes back to the disciples. He wasn't there the first time. Second time, I won't believe you're the Lord unless I can put my hand in the side. And there's such a dramatic difference between that Thomas and Thomas later. And I think it's just worth thinking about why that was.
Yeah.
Could it be that Thomas at this time had seen all these miracles and, man, this is good, this is great, let's go, I'm up for this. Oh, wait, the man we've been following just died the second time around.
I've studied that, but I also wonder if Thomas didn't think they were in sort of a death cult. They were all going to die together.
Oh, I think so.
Yeah.
I think so.
He points it out here in 17.
And the second time, I won't believe unless I touch him. Let me ask you, do you think he touched him?
No, I don't think so.
Do you think he had to touch him to believe?
No.
No.
I really don't.
Don't you think he saw those wounds with his eyes, whereas before he hadn't seen them?
His head would be scarred, his hands. It would be obvious that he had been through an ordeal. We're not talking about 2 years, the scars healed. We're talking about 3 days. Oh, it's longer than 3 days. It's a week later. But
I think the deal about Thomas relates to us. We see God work around us. We know he's there, yet when we need him, he's failed us in some way, or we think he has, and so we doubt. And that's what happened to Thomas. He had seen all the miracles that Jesus had done, yet after the crucifixion, well, he's gone. He failed.
yeah, yeah.
Not who I thought he was gonna be.
Yeah, and these guys were huddled in an upper room, scared to death, until what happened? What happened to them to get them over that fear? Pentecost, when they were filled with the Spirit, it was as if he were in the room with them again. And that's exactly what it means. Okay, any questions? God, it's a moving thing, this thing about Lazarus. That the mighty power that only he has and uses it for
I
God.
have a question.
Mike,
Because obviously I didn't get it. The word resuscitation was used instead of the word dead. And maybe I have a different translation.
I did, that's my word, that's not in there.
Okay.
Yeah,
Oh, he was dead.
one of the commentaries said, the two different words, resuscitation.
All it means is a person lives and is gonna die again.
Yeah.
That's what it means.
That's the word resuscitation means to live and.
He's gonna die again.
Yeah,
That helps.
resurrected means you're not going to die again.
Yeah.
But resuscitation means, means again.
In regards to Martha, the faith expectation that we touched upon, that you touched upon, is pretty powerful to me. I mean, I would like to think that, when I think about the disciples and all the miracles I saw, I'd like to think that I would have been like, because I think it was now, I'm like, you guys didn't believe? Come on.
Yeah.
But would I have believed, even seeing all the miracles and stuff like that?
But
So that right there is
yeah.
specific.
But sometimes we think, have each of you not seen God at work in some way?
Yeah.
And yet, isn't there a time you think, but he wouldn't do that for me? I'm not worth that. Am I the only one that would have that?
No.
Or,
We all try to put God
See,
in a box.
that's exactly right. And our belief, I mentioned this before, our belief is a growing, it's an organism that's simply growing. It's not there yet. All of it's not there yet. And it won't be till we're on the other side and get the whole picture. Because there's a lot in here that just passed me by.
Jesus, his approach was revolutionary. You think about Thomas, you think about Peter, they had their swords and they were ready to go, they were ready to die. They were warriors. Let's go and do this. But Jesus said, that's not my way. That just blew their mind. Just blew them completely out of the side. And I think it's our way too. We like to think of ourselves as men. We're ready to stand
Yep.
and fight the fight.
Yeah,
But Jesus said, that's not my way.
exactly. I
He said
think,
you're supposed to love and have mercy on those that are beat down. Our society and we as individuals are highly competitive and taught to succeed. And Jesus said, that's not my way.
that's right. I sympathize with Simon Peter. He drew his sword and cut off Malchus' ear. And Jesus said, put that dumb thing away. We don't do that here. I mean, he jumped him good. And you can almost see, here's Peter saying, man, I can't do anything right. You ever felt like that?
Well, and all of the
And actually you can't. He's got to be in control for you to do things right.
and all the disciples, when the opportunity to defend went away, they didn't have any options, so they just hightailed it to the hills.
Yep.
Well, and for me, sometimes I think, how could they do that? How could they turn on Jesus? But we do the same thing.
Every day. Every day.
Wish you hadn't said that.
Not me.
Everybody but Dale.
Move away, Bill, I don't want you to get my life.
He's taking those crazy pills.